Traces of prehistoric races found in Oregon, a Georgia newspaper, 1918. Ice caves, natural cold storage in lava beds, cracks under lava beds. Beneath men found caverns with writings and pictures made by prehistoric men, Oriental origins. Large ships with sails and oars like the Phoenicians. So again, I take snippets from the article and it gives me these really cool AI. I just think they're awesome. Klamath Falls, Oregon, February 28th. Ice caves that are natural cold storage warehouses have been discovered in the lava beds 45 miles southeast of this city. The explorers also report discovering many natural bridges where subsequent rains have washed out the ground under the great sheets of lava that have exuded from cracks in the earth centuries ago. Beneath the lava sheets and revealed by erosion, the men also found caverns whose walls bear writings and pictures made by prehistoric races that seem to be evidently of Oriental origin. None of the Indians residing in the Klamath Reservation have been able to decipher copies of the writing made by the men. Some of the pictures show great ships equipped with rude sails and with oars similar to the Phoenician galleys. This summer, the region will be visited by professors from Oregon and California colleges, and it is believed that a new page has been opened in the early history of the American continent. Now, I think right now this will be the part where I'll kind of segment away from the article just for a second, and we're going to talk about Fusang. Fusang, or the discovery of America by Chinese Buddhist priests in the 5th century. So I love this correlation because, again, I was talking to you about the junks. This article is saying that below huge lava beds. Okay, so I mean, we're talking some cataclysmic event covered this area in huge lava beds. In Oregon, the lava beds are anywhere from 100 to 450 feet deep. I mean, that's a unbelievable amount of lava. Something unbelievable happened. And when they postulated that Crater Lake was likely to be the size of Mount Shasta, the amount of volume that exited Crater Lake to make a 2,000 foot deep lake would have been monumental. And they said it probably would have been 100 to 200 feet of lava in the lava flow fields that they found around there. So I think that's maybe part one. And again, the Ring of Fire was popping off. I think part of California being an island and then being connected with the continent was a crazy earthquake lava event, because next week when we get into California, we're going to talk a lot more about lava beds. We're going to talk a lot more about ancient stone cities beneath the lava beds. But yeah, so I just wanted to read a small little snippet here. The original Oriental document on which the Chinese historians based their account of Fusang was the report of a Buddhist monk or missionary named Hui Xin, who in the year 499 AD returned from a long journey to the east. Now, remember when we first started talking in this episode, I mentioned that they have found at least 6, quote, Phoenician, quote, Chinese style ships buried in the sand in the beaches, on riverways, and on the actual beach in Oregon in the last 150 years. One of them was 200 feet long. So, I mean, that's a big boy, but if you remember in the Alaska article, they found a petrified ship that was 1,200 feet long, So, and when you read some of these Chinese historical manuscripts, they say that some of these Chinese boats were so big that they housed thousands of men. So that's probably more in line with what we're talking about when we're mentioning a 1,200 foot ship. This is probably one of the original things that made me fall in love with Dr. Longo, Old World Florida's work. I had been postulating for a long time that the Gulf of Mexico was, the original Atlantis. I had been posting stuff on that for a long time. Our work just kind of connected dots. And I was talking about the Arabic name of Alaska and how Alaska was an ancient trading seaport and it was a huge city. And then I shared in the Alaska episode. So if you haven't seen my Alaska episode, it's definitely worth a watch. We talk about ancient mosques being found, stone Greek cities, ancient boats, ancient docks, pyramids found off the coast of Alaska. Alaska used to be tropical, on and on. Back to the excerpt, sorry. This report was regularly entered on the yearbooks or annals of the Chinese Empire whence it passed not only to the pages of historians, but also of those of poets and writers of romances, by whom it was so confused with absurd inventions and marvelous tales that even the present day discredit is thrown by a certain class of critics on the entire narrative. In 1841, Charles Friedrich Neumann, professor of Oriental languages and history of the University of Munich, published the original narrative of Hui Xin from the Annals, adding to its comments of his own, elucidating its statements and advancing somewhat beyond the Goonies. I don't know. This little work I translated into English under the supervision blah 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 claim accurate translation of the Chinese text of the year. The Hui Xin I have placed in the first of this volume because it gives much more perfect form than is found in the memoir. The original report and the entire investigation is based in its course. So yeah, this is a huge book. If you are interested in the book, I will put it in the description. But basically, it just goes on to describe that not only were they able through again the research that I'm showing you now, but through the boats they've been finding, burials they've been finding. They found several burials. They found Oriental and Japanese style people buried in mounds with trees on top, just like what we've talked about in Florida, all over the Mississippi Valley, but they're Japanese phenotype, Mongolian, Chinese. And this is a really good parallel because we'll talk more as we get farther into the series in Arizona, California. They're finding Chinese, quote, Chinese, Olmec, quote, Olmec, Z dynasty, the older version of the Chinese, what they call Chinese hieroglyphics. Think of it kind of like block Hebrew. And yeah, it's incredible. It looks very much like block Hebrew. So yeah, Fusang, America, Fusang, the west coast of America, was explored much, much more diversely. There were colonies and cities all over the west coast long before the quote Lewis and Clark went on an expedition, and many of the quote indigenous people of the 1800s knew nothing of this. They had no idea any of this existed. In fact, like I said in that article, they couldn't even translate. They had no idea what this language was. But going by the drawings, they were able to correlate. I love that. Remember, Phoenician ships are just like Etruscan, are just like Basque, are just like Viking. So in my Washington episode, again, if you haven't seen that one, go back. They had a Norwegian professor who came to America and traveled all over Canada, Washington, Oregon, and he said that he found several markers that the Norse had cities and were traveling and were all over the northwestern part of America in the 11th century, 12th century. So when we say Norsemen, we're talking about the Finnish, the Phoenician, the Etruscans. It's the same sailing conglomerate. Very important distinction there.